The clatter of a teletype machine is not a dramatic sound. It is mechanical, ordinary, the sound of offices and back rooms. But on the morning of June 4th, 1942, aboard the battleship Yamato, 300 miles west of Midway Atoll, that sound is the only connection Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto has to the battle he designed, the battle he built his entire strategy around, the battle that will determine whether any of the last 6 months of his life meant anything at all. A sheet of paper is torn from the machine. Footsteps cross a metal deck. A message is placed in front of a compact figure in formal navy blue. He reads it. His face does not change. And then, not a word, not an order, a groan. He had set the clock himself. In the summer of 1941, Prime Minister Fumimaro Konoe asked Japan's most celebrated admiral a direct question. If war came with the United States, what could Japan expect? Isoroku Yamamoto did not hesitate. He had spent 2 years in America, had studied at Harvard, had played poker with American officers and eaten at their tables, and had watched the industrial heartland of the country from the windows of trains crossing the continent. He knew exactly what Japan was contemplating. He knew exactly what it meant. "I shall run wild considerably for the first 6 months or a year," he told the Prime Minister, "but I have utterly no confidence for the 2nd and 3rd years." Konoe did not act on it. The faction demanding war had already decided. And Yamamoto, who had been transferred to command the combined fleet partly to protect him from assassination by the militarists who wanted the war he opposed, was left holding the plans. The attack on Pearl Harbor came on December 7th, 1941. 6 months later, almost to the day, the Battle of Midway began. June 4th, 1942. Yamamoto had set his own clock. He had told anyone who would listen exactly when it would stop. Now he is on the Yamato's bridge, reading the reports as they come in, and the clock is stopping, and there is nothing he can do but absorb what it means. He was born in 1884, graduated from the Naval Academy in 1904, and the following year stood on the deck of the cruiser Nishin during the Battle of Tsushima, the most decisive naval engagement of the 20th century's first decade, watching Admiral Togo Heihachiro annihilate the Russian fleet through surprise, speed, and absolute commitment to the offensive. A Japanese shell took 2 fingers from his left hand that day. He wore the scars for the rest of his life without comment. By his mid-40s, Yamamoto had spent 2 years studying at Harvard and 2 more as naval attaché in Washington. He learned English with the same discipline he brought to everything else. He played poker with Americans, traveled their country, and arrived at a conclusion that never left him. The United States was not a country Japan could fight to a finish. Its industrial capacity, the steel mills, the shipyards, and the production lines, was not a factor to be overcome by boldness or skill. It was a fact of arithmetic, and the arithmetic was Japan's enemy. He said so repeatedly throughout the 1930s as the militarist faction pushed Japan toward confrontation and war. His opposition drew death threats. His transfer to the combined fleet was, as much as anything else, a way of getting him out of a city where men were willing to kill him for saying what the numbers said. He continued to say it. When war came anyway, he did what he had always done at the card table. He looked at a bad hand and played it as aggressively as possible. If Japan had to fight, it had to end the fight quickly, before the American industrial machine could turn itself fully to the task. A devastating first blow. A negotiated peace before the balance of production shifted irrevocably, the only path to anything other than ruin. He had once served as captain of the aircraft carrier Akagi, converted from a battlecruiser hull, recognizable by her unusual triple-stack arrangement and downward-angled flight deck. He had walked her decks and given orders from her bridge. She had launched the aircraft that struck Pearl Harbor. She was where this war had started. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a tactical success. While his staff celebrated, Yamamoto spent the day in visible depression. He had done what he had been told to do. He understood what it meant. The Midway plan was his attempt to make it mean something else. Destroy the remaining American carriers. Seize the atoll and extend Japan's defensive perimeter. Force a decisive battle on terms Japan could win before the 6-month clock ran out. He felt so strongly about the plan that he threatened to resign if it was rejected. Imperial General Headquarters approved it. The plan rested on 3 assumptions: that the American fleet would not sail until after Midway had been attacked, that the Americans would have no more than 2 carriers available, and that Japan would have the element of complete surprise. Every single one of those assumptions was wrong. While Yamamoto's plan was taking shape in the spring of 1942, something was happening in a basement in Pearl Harbor that he knew nothing about. American cryptanalysts had been working for months on JN-25, Japan's primary naval operational code. By early 1942, they were reading significant portions of Japanese naval traffic. The target of the coming offensive was still ambiguous. The Japanese referred to it only as AF. Commander Edwin Layton, Admiral Chester Nimitz's intelligence officer, believed AF was Midway. He needed confirmation. The confirmation was arranged with characteristic directness. The garrison at Midway sent a false radio message reporting a shortage of fresh water. 2 days later, Japanese signals relayed this detail in code, noting that AF was short of water. The Americans intercepted it. The location was confirmed. The trap was set before a single Japanese ship had left harbor. Meanwhile, Yamamoto's own intelligence efforts were failing systematically. His submarine picket line arrived at its station too late, after the American carriers had already passed through. A planned aerial reconnaissance of Pearl Harbor by flying boats had to be abandoned when the intended refueling point, a bay in the French frigate Shoals, turned out to be occupied by an American warship. Japan was sailing toward Midway in near total ignorance of what was waiting. Layton's estimate, when he delivered it to Nimitz, was precise enough to seem almost impossible. Bearing 325 degrees from Midway. Range 175 nautical miles. Time of arrival 0600 June 4th. Nimitz later said the estimate was 5 degrees, 5 miles, 5 minutes off. The men responsible for the ambush knew exactly where to be and exactly when to be there. Nagumo knew none of this. He was steaming toward Midway in the belief that he retained complete strategic surprise, that the American carriers were far to the south or still at anchor in Pearl Harbor, nowhere near his line of advance. He believed this, in part, because Yamamoto had said nothing to contradict it. In the days before the battle, Yamamoto received signals suggesting increased American radio activity. Traffic indicating a strong enemy force might be near Hawaiian waters, not safely out of range as his plan assumed. He withheld this from Nagumo. The reason was radio silence. Breaking it might alert the Americans to the fleet's position, might compromise the very surprise on which the entire operation depended. The consequence was that the man commanding 4 of Japan's finest carriers sailed toward his fate without knowing the most important fact about it. There was one more thing Yamamoto did not know. At the Battle of the Coral Sea in May, the Americans had lost a carrier. Japan's battle reports assessed the USS Yorktown as sunk. She was not. She limped into Pearl Harbor with extensive damage, and the engineers who examined her estimated 90 days of work before she would be battle-worthy again. Nimitz told them he needed her back in 3. 1,400 men worked around the clock for 72 hours. On May 30th, the Yorktown sailed for Midway. Impaired, jury-rigged, repair crews still working aboard her, but there. When Nagumo's pilots looked up and counted 3 American carriers where Yamamoto's intelligence had promised at most 2, the number on his assumptions column was 0. The morning of June 4th begins before dawn. Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's 4-carrier strike force, Akagi, Kaga, Sōryū, Hiryū rides in formation 240 miles northwest of Midway. The carriers are the heart of the Kido Butai, surrounded by a screen of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. 108 aircraft launch into the pre-dawn dark and form up for the strike on Midway. Nagumo watches them go. He is 55 years old, a surface warfare officer placed in command of carrier operations who had spent years arguing that aircraft carriers were too vulnerable to bomb hits, that a single strike at the wrong moment could destroy one from within. He had been given 4 of them anyway. Midway's radar has already picked up his strike force. The island's aircraft are scrambling. When 108 Japanese planes arrive, the airfield is largely empty, and the anti-aircraft fire is fierce enough to damage nearly half the attackers. The strike commander radios back. A second wave is needed. At 7:15 a.m., Nagumo orders the reserve aircraft, armed with torpedoes for an anti-ship strike, waiting on the hangar decks of Akagi and Kaga to have their weapons changed. Torpedoes out, bombs in. Prepare for a second attack on Midway. At 7:28 a.m., a scout plane breaks radio silence. 10 enemy surface ships bearing northeast. No indication of their type. Nagumo halts the rearming, waits for clarification. At 7:45 a.m., he orders the aircraft not yet converted to retain their torpedoes. But many planes have already been switched. The torpedoes that have been removed are not stowed below. They are sitting on the hangar decks, alongside fuel lines, alongside aircraft now being readied for a different mission. 4 carriers are covered with armed ordnance caught in transition between purposes. Aboard Hiryū, a signal goes up. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, 49 years old, Princeton-educated, widely considered the most gifted carrier admiral Japan possessed, has seen what Nagumo has not. The scouts report means American carriers are out there, close now. Launch immediately. Whatever ordnance the planes are carrying, every minute of delay is a minute the Americans have to find Nagumo first. Nagumo overrules him. Then the Americans come in waves. Land-based torpedo bombers from Midway, 6 TBF Avengers and 4 B-26 Marauders, fly into a wall of Zero fighters. Not one torpedo hits, then 3 squadrons of TBD Devastators from the American carriers. 41 aircraft, obsolete, slow, without fighter cover. Each wave came in regardless. Each wave was torn apart. Not one torpedo struck a Japanese ship, but the Zeros have been pulled to the wave tops. The sky above the Japanese carriers is empty. It is 10:22 in the morning. They come from above. 37 SBD Dauntless dive bombers from Enterprise, and 17 more from Yorktown, the carrier that wasn't supposed to be there, push over into their dives from altitude, emerging from cloud cover the Japanese never thought to watch. The carriers below are in the worst possible configuration. Aircraft armed and fueled, not yet launched. Ordnance on the hangar decks. The combat air patrol at the waterline. Nobody looking up. Within 6 minutes, Sōryū and Kaga are burning from stem to stern. Akagi takes a single bomb, but it detonates beside fueled aircraft and unsecured ordnance, and the fires spread faster than anything can stop them. All 3 carriers are consumed from within. Torpedoes cook off in chain reaction. Aviation gasoline ignites. The hangar decks become furnaces. 3 pillars of black smoke rise above the Pacific. They are visible from 300 miles away. On the bridge of Yamato, the messages begin to arrive. They come one at a time, torn from the teletype, carried across the teak deck by staff officers moving with the careful deliberateness of men delivering something they do not want to deliver. Yamamoto reads them. His staff stands in silence. Sōryū, hit, burning. Kaga, hit, burning. Akagi, hit, burning. He had predicted 6 months. He had watched 6 months arrive. He had designed the plan that was supposed to prevent this, approved every detail of it, threatened to resign if it wasn't carried out. He had placed himself 300 miles from the battle he was commanding, on the bridge of a ship too large and too slow to matter, waiting for a fleet engagement that was never going to come. He read each report. He said nothing. Then, not a shout, not an order. A groan. The sound a man makes when he has always known something and now has to know it completely. His staff said nothing. The Pacific was clear. The Yamato rode easily. The engines hummed. Then came word that Akagi would have to be abandoned. She was still afloat, listing, fires uncontrollable, but not yet sunk. There was brief consideration of saving her. The fires made it impossible. The order had to be given. He had been her captain. He had walked her decks, given orders from her bridge. She had launched the aircraft that struck Pearl Harbor, and now, with the morning still young and the Pacific still clear, he ordered her sunk. "I was once the captain of Akagi," he said, "and it is with heartfelt regret that I must now order that she be sunk." One carrier is still fighting. Hiryū, Yamaguchi's ship, the one that might have struck first if anyone had listened, survived the morning intact. Yamaguchi doesn't wait for orders. He launches 2 waves immediately, aggressive, well executed. The first finds Yorktown and puts 3 bombs into her. The second, misidentifying the partially repaired Yorktown as a different carrier, finds her again and puts 2 torpedoes into her. She's abandoned. In Yamaguchi's accounting, he has struck 2 American carriers. He has struck one twice. The scouts from Yorktown, still flying aircraft as she lists in the water, locate Hiryū. At 5 in the afternoon, dive bombers from Enterprise put 4 1,000-pound bombs through her flight deck. By dusk, Hiryū is beyond saving. Yamaguchi chose not to leave her. That night, as the fires spread and the ship listed, he and Hiryū's captain stood on deck and watched the moon rise. He was 49 years old. Yamamoto is still fighting. He strips Nagumo of command. The man now flying his flag from a light cruiser, 3 carriers burning behind him, and replaces him with Admiral Nobutake Kondo. He orders a general pursuit of the American fleet. He wants a night surface action, where his battleships in superior numbers might extract something from what remains of the day. The gambler is still at the table, pushing the last chips forward. Admiral Raymond Spruance pulls his carriers east, not from superior strategic insight. A submarine report, incorrect it will turn out, tells him the Japanese may still intend to invade Midway. He withdraws to defend it. That wrong report keeps his fleet away from Yamamoto's battleships. The killing blow that was supposed to follow the trap never lands because the prey has accidentally stepped out of it. Japan's correct assumptions destroyed it. America's wrong assumption saved it. The difference was not courage, not skill, not strategic genius. One side was reading the other's signals. The other side was reading its own and getting them wrong. Through the night of the 4th and into the early morning of the 5th, Japanese destroyers take up positions around the burning hulks. The ships are still afloat, abandoned but not yet sunk. There is the danger that the Americans might board them, recover code books, salvage intelligence. Japanese torpedoes, fired from Japanese destroyers, send them down. Sōryū in the evening, Kaga hours later. Akagi just before dawn, the sky turning gray over the Pacific as her hull opens and she slides under. Hiryū a few hours after that, the coup de grâce delivered by their own side. Yamamoto's plan ended by Japanese torpedoes. The fleet returns to Hashirajima on June 14th. Before any ship makes port, the orders arrive. Say nothing. Do not discuss what happened. Not with family, not with anyone outside the fleet. Japan announces a great victory. 2 American carriers sunk. The name Midway is spoken with pride. There is a brief, almost incidental acknowledgement that the Kaga and Sōryū were also lost. The Akagi and Hiryū remain on the Navy's official roster, listed as unmanned. The Japanese public would not learn the truth for a decade. Yamamoto knew. He had no illusions about what had happened or what it cost. To his staff in private, he said, "Never tell anyone outside my staff that the submarine force and the 1st Air Fleet were responsible for the failure at Midway. The failure at Midway was mine." Not the weather, not Nagumo's decisions, though those decisions had been catastrophic. His. He was retained in command, at least partly because removing him would have required explaining why. And explaining why would have required admitting what had happened. His continued presence on the Yamato's bridge was itself a form of official concealment. The man who had accepted private responsibility was required to publicly perform competence in a war that had already turned against him. He had said he had no confidence for the 2nd and 3rd years. The 2nd year proved him right. The fighting around Guadalcanal consumed carriers and aircraft and the irreplaceable pilots who flew them. The same pilots, he had always said, could not be replaced quickly enough. Each month of attrition drew Japan further from the offensive posture Yamamoto had tried to establish and closer to the defensive strangulation he had spent his career trying to prevent. American shipyards were working. American production lines were turning. The dozens of carriers Yamamoto had always feared were being laid down across a continent. On August 28, 1942, at the Combined Fleet's base at Truk in the Caroline Islands, he wrote to a friend, "I sense," he said, "that my life must be completed in the next 100 days." He was off by a few months. On April 18, 1943, Yamamoto boarded a transport at Rabaul for an inspection tour of forward bases in the Solomon Islands. His flight schedule, the times, the routes, the aircraft numbers, the precise arrival windows, had been transmitted by radio in the same codes that Nimitz's men had been reading for more than a year. 16 P-38 Lightnings were already in the air, flying low and wide to avoid radar detection, timed to intersect his aircraft over the jungle of Bougainville. He never reached his destination. A Japanese search party found him the following morning in the jungle west of Buin. He had been thrown clear of the wreckage. He was sitting perfectly straight under a tree, white-gloved hand grasping the hilt of his sword. The same intelligence apparatus that had read his fleet's movements before Midway, that had placed Nimitz's carriers at the exact bearing Leighton predicted at the exact hour he predicted it, had intercepted his itinerary and sent 16 fighters to meet him. He never knew it existed. More than 3,000 Japanese sailors died at Midway. 4 carriers gone. 248 aircraft. The pilots and mechanics who had spent years becoming irreplaceable. Gone. While Japan spent the following year struggling to recover, the United States produced dozens of carriers and trained thousands of men to fly from them. The industrial capacity Yamamoto had studied from train windows crossing the American continent, the capacity he had described to Konoe as unsurvivable in a long war, manifested exactly as he had said it would. He had said, "I shall run wild considerably for the first 6 months or a year." And he had Pearl Harbor, the Indian Ocean, the long arc of Japanese offensive action burning across the Pacific. He was right about that. He had said, "I have utterly no confidence for the 2nd and 3rd years." The 2nd year brought Guadalcanal and attrition and the slow bleeding of everything he had tried to preserve. The 3rd year he did not live to see. He was right about everything. The 6 months, the carriers. The long war he could not win. He was right about all of it. And not one of those things, not one, was something he could stop.